in the dark, I play my dreams. Permaculture flows like sweet streams. I'm the daddy with the know-how seed. Creating the world like it's meant to be. Permaculture, P-I-M-P, I'm the king. That's the love in everything. Bringing change, making it last. Join the permaculture.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to episode 311 of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, and practical living.
Permaculture, P-I-M-P, with soulful rays. In the P-I-Pimpcast, where we find our place.
Yeah, it might even cover a little bit of paranormal and even prognostication at a time. So there's a bunch of P's in there. All right, y'all. So this episode, as always, brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from TwoOldCrowsHomestead.com.
Turn that simp into a pimp.
Bam! Living Soil Foundation. Yeah, we're moving the needle over there, folks, and we're doing it in a big way, and we're doing it at some of our clandestine locations as well. It's not going as quickly as I'd like because, to a certain extent, I'm waiting on Dr. Will to get back to me concerning some of the testing results. And I told you before we were 90% there, and he's just going at 100 miles an hour because he's trying to get his stock in place for the swamp of orders that he's almost certainly going to get once we report that we've crossed the finish line on this thing. So, yeah. And I will say that using his product, and like I said, I'm not going to talk about it until we get to the final countdown, so to speak. But his product will get you there. Mine will get you there. But when you combine them both, and I'm talking my compost extract along with his, the needle's moving so doggone quick, it's blowing our minds. In fact, we're going to hopefully do a video here before long of, we got one bed that's just a test bed. We got one bed that's my stuff. We got one bed three beds in the high tunnel that are his stuff, 3 beds that are my stuff, and then 7 beds that all of them are combined. And I think you're going to be blown away when you see the results. So we'll be coming to that hopefully here in a couple of weeks. Got to make sure things are up out of the ground far enough for you to be able to tell the difference. So I think you're going to be blown away. So anyway, you want to go check us out, Living Soil Foundation. You can always check us out on Give, Send, Go. And if we ever get 2 minutes to rub together, my goodness, man, we will absolutely get this website squared away. By we, I mean your mom. So yeah, we'll get there eventually.
My mom.
Yeah, not your mama, but your mom, William. I want to give a shout out to Renewed Homestead. Go check them out on YouTube, y'all. They handle all the stuff in the chat, so don't start no SH and there won't be no IT. So, yeah, go check them out. In fact, I was just thinking about Ben and Denise yesterday because I went and put together a compost pile to try to remediate some of that garbage that I picked up at the local, what do you call it, like the compost place or whatever?
Landscape yard.
Yeah, one of those. Well, it was one of the more highly touted ones around here, and we looked at it under the microscope. And as we talked about last time, complete mess. And I'm showing you 2 different ways in which we can turn it around. But anyway, they gave me a bunch of chicken poop from a while back, and Ben happily gave me a bunch of like bags of chicken poop, which is handy, which is the greatest gift anybody could give a permaculture pimp daddy. And then, of course, I was also thinking about Ken and Amy from Mountainside Homestead with Ken and Amy on YouTube. I used their guts. They gave me a bunch of chicken, and judging by the head, hopefully this wasn't a chicken. I mean, either they're butchering pterodactyls or they had some turkeys over there. So took the feathers, took the guts, and as you know, son, I mean, what that stuff does to a compost pile will absolutely blow your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you want like a hands-on experience on like what guts can do to a compost pile, then come to Midwest Preparedness Conference. The sheep that we process there, the guts are going to go into the next day's class of the composting class that I'm going to be doing. So yeah, it turns into fantastic stuff.
Yeah. There's something about it that when you add guts, blood, feathers, skin, things like that, it just does something to a compost pile that just kind of puts it in orbit, in my view. In fact, that one you and I did, I don't know if I ever told you the results of it. The one we did out at the the one where
Cloud9 Farm.
I'm sorry?
Cloud9 Farm.
Yeah, Cloud9 Farm for that festival that was going on out there. Man, that stuff turned into absolute garden gold. And we had, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 70 chickens up in those piles. So it was absolutely fantastic the way that panned out. But folks, there's something about when you put processed animals, if you can avoid the big bones, that's fine. But chicken bones, I mean, they'll break down. But there's something about what it does to the compost that'll absolutely blow your mind. So, yeah. Hopefully I'll have that video out by the end of the week. So I want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat right now. If you would hit that thumbs up, tell everybody we're live, and that way they can go ahead and start suppressing some of this information. Some of it might blow your mind here, and I'll start off with that here in a little bit. But anyway, I had to do some running around today, and son, okay, first of all, I ran into Amy from Mountainside with Ken and Amy. I ran into her. She was over there doing like a riverside cleanup. She just happened to be at one of the locations I was at to go in one of my remediation locations. And she was over there and she was showing me pictures on Easter Sunday, what her skies looked like. And it looked like the Blue Angels were flying over. It looked exact like they were race tracking across the sky in parallel lines. Craziest thing. And then, of course, every morning starts off clear, and then you just give it about 8 o'clock, and then they'll start racing across the sky. I mean, it's nonstop. So, folks, right to your, I mean, hopefully you get a better response from your congressperson than I did, but it was, the guy literally wrote back, well, that's a conspiracy theory. Have a nice day. I mean, that was, I posted it on X. It was something like, he might as well have said that. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's about how it went. So I'm just going to stay on top of these people, and I'm asking, hopefully all of you folks start doing the same thing. Let's see. We had a couple of questions right off the bat in the very beginning. I'll go ahead and cover that, and then I'll get into the farm news. So Forrest Smith says, hi from Alabama. Comfort question. I have some root cuttings to plant. Can I plant them in a small 6-inch deep kiddie pool and then move them in? Yeah, you could do that, but it's always better to plant them in place where you want them to go. But yeah, there's absolutely, it's probably not a bad idea if you're going to propagate. What do you think, son?
Well, I did a consultation for him. I know exactly his setup. Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all to kind of keep him in a centrally located area, and then you can move them out to like where your fruit trees are and stuff. And then that way you're not guessing where you put your comfrey plants. Because if you do the comfrey root cuttings like in place, you kind of forget where you put them exactly, and then watering them becomes a hassle. But if you do it this way, that would work out perfectly for you, Forrest.
Yeah, that I don't see anything wrong with that. It's actually a pretty ingenious idea, really, especially if you intend propagating it.
He's got some awesome ideas. Some ideas I can't talk about because he's got to get patents, but that dude's got some awesome ideas.
No, that's definitely out the box thinking, man. Way to go. Okay, and here's another one. What if the bones are already spent? I'm glad you brought this up. Shield Maiden of Christ. Love that name. What if the bones are already spent day in the crock pot? Is there much left for the compost after the bone broth is made? Absolutely. It's even, I would argue to a certain extent, it's even better because it's going to break down quicker. In fact, that's exactly what I do with my bone broth. And provided they're not cow bones, but if I'm doing like chickens, or I let my bones go so long, it could be 3 days in that crock pot, that I can literally take my fingers and squeeze them and break the bones. In fact, I do that on purpose because when you have older chickens, you'll find out that, now let me break this down a little bit. If you use store-bought chickens, you'll find out that within 24 hours, you can probably break those bones with your bare hands. But if you use farm-raised chickens, you'll find out that those bones are infinitely stronger. So it takes about 3 days for those bones to break down. Now, do you necessarily have to get to that point? Well, I do, because I like to break all the bones and make sure I get all the marrow in there. So I strain everything, and I would ordinarily give it to the dogs, or if we had pigs right now, I would give it to them. But if we had dogs, but I got things in there that dogs ain't cool with, like onions and a couple of other things. So anyway, I strain that off, and all those things I put in a bowl and I freeze it, or I stick it in a bag. But that's exactly, I use the very same thing. In fact, I might have even talked about it in the video that I'm making, where I do exactly that same thing. So yes, absolutely. Put that in I save it all up. In fact, like the stuff I got from Ken and Amy, the guts, I froze. Those things have been frozen for quite a while. And then the other animals I process, those guts, I mean, I freeze those for quite a while. And then when I'm ready to make a compost pile, that's where it all goes. So yeah, absolutely. Another great solution there. So let's see here. I'll come back
We've
to
got one. Real quick, Southern Pines Farm. Be saying, William, I'm a metal fabricator and a woodworker. I would like to build a broad fork and would like your help on features and dimensions. Shoot me an email at thepermacultureconsultant@gmail.com. Thepermacultureconsultant@gmail.com. That is something I would love to collaborate on because, man, is there some garbage out there for sale.
Boy, you got that right. Stephen, well, let me go ahead and hit one more. Stephen Jones says, I'm moving in this week to Georgia, but my fruit trees in Maryland have already blossomed. Can I cut off scions from the blooming branches? You know, I really don't know the answer to that question.
I know where you can find out, though.
Yes.
Flomaton Famous. Hit up Flomaton Famous, and he's got answers for you. That's for doggone sure.
Yeah, first of all, I don't know if those are gonna make it from Maryland to Georgia, but I've never done it that way. I've always done it when they're dormant. So I really don't know, but I would imagine it would absolutely work. Flomaton Famous, maybe Stefan Subkowiak. I mean, he would obviously have answers as well. But yeah, Flomaton Famous. I'm looking outside the window right now at a tree that I got from him from another festival. So he grafted it for me a while back, and it was a gift, and it's cool to see that thing going right now. So that's one. I'll be honest with you. I really don't know the answer on that, but I would imagine it would absolutely work. So anyway, let's get into this, folks. I'm going to go on the little bit of the esoteric side right now. Moments before I walked in this studio, I quite literally found out that the Pope died. Well, this is going to take a minute to unfold, and hopefully my memory is on point. So what does that have anything to do with anything? Okay. Years ago, and I want to say, and folks, if I get some of the details wrong, look, I don't have any notes, okay? You're just going to have to work with my memory here. I think it was about 2012 that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam wrote a book, and it was called Petrus Romanus. And it's in my library down there, or somebody borrowed it and didn't give it back. I could have swore I had 2 or 3 copies of that book anyway. In that book, it describes this. Bear with me, folks. Just hang on. I'm going somewhere with this. There was this prophecy from St. Malachi, and I want to say he lived in maybe the 16th century, somewhere thereabout. Anyway, he made this prediction that there would be somewhere around 112 popes, and that it would culminate, and that the very last pope would be 112, and then following his death, as I recall, it would bring in the destruction of Rome and this great apostasy. Well, may have jumped the gun on that because I think the apostasy has happened quite some time ago, not just in the Catholic Church either. Anyway, I digress. Tom Horn and Chris Putnam wrote this book, and it sent shockwaves through the corridors of power all up and down the Vatican when the latest pope came in. I mean, these guys were, to a certain extent, afraid for their lives because nobody in the Vatican, for the most part, knew that the previous pope was going to step down. It hadn't been done in 600 years. So these guys wrote this book. I don't want to say prophesying, but predicting from the St. Malachi prophecy. And like I said, he was an Irish bishop, as I recall. Anyway, that the very last pope to come in would be the last pope. And following his death, you're going to see this great conflagration, this unfolding of crazy things happening all the way around. Now, keep in mind, folks, it's been, I don't know, 15 years since I read that book. So give me a break if I don't get all the details right. And I was trying to find it, but I couldn't. So anyway, I know it's down there or somebody's borrowed it. I just can't seem to find it right now. I can find every other book from Exo Vaticana to all the other books that Tom Horn's written, but I can't find this one. Well, remember a while back, we talked about all the crazy things I thought might unfold in 2025. Son, I see you already shaking your head.
Yeah, what are the freaking chances?
Yeah. So this guy cashes in, and here it is in 2025. The Pope cashes in, and according to this St. Malachi, that when that happened, you were going to see all hell break loose, starting, as I understand it, in Rome. If I'm not mistaken, I think he even said that Rome was going to be destroyed, that he would be the final pope. Now, I guess we're about to find out whether or not the late Tom Horn and the late Chris Putnam, because both of them are dead now, I guess we're going to find out whether or not these guys were right. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. So I don't know. All I know, look, folks, when you take in a lot of information and when you read a lot of books and something like this pops off, I mean, like literally before I started this show, I'm like, okay, has nothing to do with what I plan to talk about, but there's no way I'm going to come on here and not talk about it. So folks, you might want to check it out and look into it for yourself and examine the information. 2025, the Pope cashes in. I didn't make any predictions, but I told you some of the other weird things that are unfolding in this year. But if these guys are right, hold on to your hat.
No, Margie Chisholm just mentioned, I wonder if he died earlier and just announced it at Passover season. There is something to that. I don't know like how, or if it's some like bastardization of like Passover lamb, of the actual Passover lamb, or what, but there's something to that. I don't know what it is, but like, you know, you get that feeling in your gut and you're like, yes, that is the right track. I don't have anything to it. Something there.
Well, and then also Easter. Let's just be honest about Easter. Okay, so I'm going to have to rely on my memory once again, folks, since you brought it up, because I didn't make that correlation. Strangely enough, I didn't. So I guess he cashed in today. So think about Easter itself, okay? If you read The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, the Catholic Church years ago tried to, and this isn't Catholic bashing, I'm just telling you historically how this went down. As I recall, it's been many moons since I read that book, and it's a tough one to read. Anyway, in that book, The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, he basically claims, and I'll just bring up Easter. Now, I asked Scipio Eruditus about it yesterday, who is probably the consummate expert on a lot of this stuff, and he dismissed some of it. But the part where I think he agreed, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, is that his correlations regarding Easter were right on the money. Now, what he claims in this book, in The Two Babylons, is that the modern day Catholic Church, and I'm not saying this is all accurate, but he makes the claim that the modern day Catholic Church is the extension of Babylon. And he cites Constantine in 312 AD, basically wanting to make the hodgepodge of all these different religions that were running around Rome. And so they came up with this. And so he makes the correlation that the Vestal virgins of the Babylonian times became nuns, that things like Easter, which were an homage to Ishtar, the Babylonian god, the whole thing with the rabbits, the eggs, the fertility, all these things were somehow weaved into Resurrection Day. And that's why you never hear me say Happy Easter, because I'm aware of the origins of all this stuff. So, and in fact, I got a number of problems with Easter on other levels as well. But anyway, I celebrate the resurrection of my Lord and Savior every day. So, in fact, I thank him every single day for sending his only begotten son to die for my sins, to be risen again and now at his right hand. So I do that every single day, multiple times a day. So that being said, you have Easter, which Ishtar, according to the old Babylonian things, and son, I didn't even make the correlation until you just brought it up regarding him dying around this time. So a little bit auspicious at the very least. I mean,
here's another thing though, is that when it was announced was, I want to say, closer to the lunar calendar. For those that are Torah observant, it's closer to the lunar calendar, which the lunar calendar is what I don't know how to say this without, it's like what the Jews followed. The Jews followed the lunar calendar.
Right.
That came much later. That's not the correct, according to the Bible, that is not the correct calendar. Like this year was my first year celebrating Pesach and doing like first fruits and all that, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread and all that, which is when like that would have happened. Not like weeks and weeks later during this literally Festival of Ishtar, which is celebrating the fertility brought on by the sacrifice that they did during the winter solstice of all the children that were born from the orgy from the prior year. Like that, it's just
Yeah,
okay.
there's a lot of smoke
Yeah.
there, son. I'm sorry I didn't give you much preparation time on something like this, but I quite literally found out moments because I've been busy, man. I mean, I work for a living just like a lot of folks out here. So I didn't find out until moments here, and then immediately took me to Petrus Romanus, and I'm thinking, okay, could this guy be dead already? And then it's presented. I mean, I think Denise said he died on the 21st officially, but who even knows what you can believe? It's just the timing in all of this. And like I said, all the other crazy things that I told you that were probably going to unfold in 2025, does this kick them off? I don't know. All that, look, that's why the tagline of this show is stay alert, stay alive, because I got a feeling we're only hitting the edge of this roller coaster ride. I think we're just coming to the top of it right now. And I think it's going to be a little bit crazy. And
Thursday's episode.
I'm sorry.
You think Thursday's episode we can talk about this?
Well, I don't know. I think I got a guest on Thursday.
Okay.
So we may have to hit it at another time, or we could do something special maybe on another day, maybe Wednesday. We'll have to work it out. We'll work all that out offline. But anyway, folks, I just brought that up because there's a whole bunch of data points going on right now in my head, and as I suspect there's William as well. And you know, it could be all wet for all I know. All I know is that when Tom Horn and Chris Putnam came out with this book, and then they came out with Exo Vaticana, the Vatican lost its ever-loving mind. You had the Vatican astronomers like Guy Cosmonago. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that guy's name. But anyway, all these people, man, they were absolutely losing their ever-loving minds first when Petrus Romanus came out, because they're like, there is no way you could have possibly known this. No possible way. And supposedly he's going to be the last pope. As I recall, somebody will have to fact check me on this, but I think it was 112 popes, and the 112 was the one that just cashed in. So yeah, let's see where it goes from here. So now let's talk about some other things, son. So yeah, we'll get back to the farm news. I know we took a little departure here, folks, but hey, it is, I didn't make the news cycle, okay? And I just found out about it, so sorry if I'm late to the party here. Anyway, I thought you might appreciate some of that information. All right, so I've got some other things going on. Today I'm starting to try to work out again, put on a little bit of pudge through the winter, and I'm going to start doing a little bit more. I mean, I've been doing cardio workouts, but now I'm going to start doing some, I hate it when I don't know. I just feel flabby, man. I'm not walking through the door chest first. So I'm going to have to change all that around. And so I'm getting back in the saddle. But when you're going this is our busiest time of year, and I am literally moving from dawn till dusk. But you know what? I'm going to take some of my own advice, because you always hear people say, well, I couldn't work out because of this, or I couldn't work out. Okay. Well, have you ever had anybody make an excuse for why they didn't brush their teeth? Yeah, me neither. I don't know. I did meet some funky SOBs back in the day, but well, I'm sure there's a whole gang of Asheville people that'll offer excuses, but I haven't heard it. Anyway, point being, I'm not going to make that excuse either. You know what? I never made an excuse. I never had an excuse for not brushing my teeth, so I'm not going to make an excuse for not working out. So I'm going to get back in the saddle there. Kevin says, I don't know. I live in Arkansas.
The same with me, Dad. Yeah, like after that first deployment out to the disaster relief and stuff, I've just eaten. Like I went from 75 hard eating carnivore to eating crap on the road, and I've definitely put on weight. And actually, I'm doing like a long-term video on that of like my starting weight since North Carolina, being fat, and I'm going to see how quickly I can lose it just doing the carnivore diet and stuff like that. And I'm filming it all so that way people can maybe see, like, I'll stop once I can see like resting abs again. That's where I'll stop.
Well, your mom actually gets jealous at me because she knows that honestly, I can get into fighting weight in about 2 weeks. And she'll get jealous. Like, I can't believe it just fall. I mean, well, woman, you ain't got it to lose in the first place. I mean,
No.
Yeah, your mom always stays pretty healthy, and she just gets aggravated that I'm able to lose it in like record time. Yeah, hey, don't blame me. Don't hate the player, hate the game, honey. So, so going out there today, here's another little strange phenomenon. Last couple of years, last several years actually, we would find bee swarms everywhere. I've only found one this year, and it was quite small. We actually lost a couple of hives, which is unusual for us. And I can't help but wonder if it's not all this junk they're spraying from the sky. We had some strong hives, and I just wonder if these little guys out there are just suffering. And yeah, just finally saw a swarm today, and it was tiny, so I didn't even bother messing with it. So, and then we got another little crazy phenomenon going. Son, we got black locust dying, which is the most prolific tree in these mountains, probably. And they're down there. Nearly all of them that we planted are dying. So
really?
All the fruit trees are just fine. Just the black locust. Like to know how
that's odd. That is odd.
It's one of the most robust trees you will find. In fact, people complain because you can't kill them. And they're dying, but somehow all the fruit trees are doing just fine.
So did Kevin. Kevin just said he lost 3 black locust trees.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I'm sure if anybody else is having this phenomenon, let us know. This is crazy. So these are some of the most robust trees out there. So it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense at all. So there's something going on out there. Like I said, they're spraying like crazy, and it's a real mess. One last thing I want to cover, son, and I'll throw it over to you. I know Denise and Ben over at Renewed Homestead would probably give me an amen on this. As I'm doing my running around, man, I got to interact with people, which can be a good and a bad thing. I ran into a couple of people at Tractor Supply, and they were every last one of them. In fact, there was a husband and a wife. I never did catch their names. I should have done so. And then also there was this other guy, and I was there, all of us staring at the ivermectin because there was none on the shelf. Couldn't find it in the entire, they didn't have it in the store. In fact, there was one guy seemed to be in dire straits to find some because his wife was in a bad way. And anyway, people seem to feel the need to stock up on that stuff right now, folks. So you might want to think about getting some for yourself. And like I said, we were all looking for the pet stuff. So I know I have a decent supply, but I would highly encourage those of you who are looking for it. Maybe you want to make sure it's just ivermectin if that's what you want. But I'm not giving you any advice on how to do that. But as I'm out there, son, why is it? Why is it? And I want somebody to honestly explain this to me, because I know Ben and Denise, we've had this conversation before. What is it? Is there some holy sacrament to the hardcore liberals in this world concerning personal hygiene? Man, there was every single person I came across in Asheville. You can always tell, man, they haven't taken a shower in a week. What is it? I will go without eating before I go without bathing, before I go around. It's one thing if you got the general stink of that day, but when you see a guy walk past you, dude, and you're in like a Ingles or something grocery store, the guy walks past you and he smells like 30 miles of Louisiana swamp that's decomposing. When you have that kind of funk on you, you're not telling me you can't smell it. What is it with all these weirdo lunatics? And it's like the nastier you are, it's like some holy sack. There's got to be something to it. I don't know what's going on out there, and I'm wondering if other people are seeing it as well.
Yeah, I don't get it. That is one thing that'll make me want to get violent. Like,
yeah,
it's one thing if you worked all day and then you stink at the end of the day, completely makes sense. That makes sense. But for it to build up on you, man, I just want to start pimp slapping fools whenever they just, you can't take a bath? You learn as a child to take a bath or to take a shower. Just clean yourself.
But it's getting worse.
Disgusting.
I've had this conversation with Ben and Denise a number of times. In fact, I won't say where it was, but we were at this event. Yeah, I won't give it away. But anyway, we were at a particular event, and Ben and Denise were both like, what is the issue with people not being able to take a bath? And of course, I bust out laughing because I'm like, I mean, I can't even sit in this classroom. I mean, you go to organic grower school or some of these others, man, you can barely sit through the class because there is somebody, some pig pen walking around. I'm like, how do you go to sleep at night smelling like that? I mean,
Yeah.
we have more water in the United States of Amnesia than any country on earth. You're not telling me that you can't find a place to take a shower somewhere, but it is getting worse where I can smell the funk of the guy from the next aisle over. And I don't know why it is, but when women are funky, it's twice as bad. I don't know.
Women, I don't care what y'all say. Women have a greater capacity of being funky than any man does. And to add insult to injury, these people in Asheville are all on vegan diets. They're painting the ball. They have to wash their butt. They have to wash their butt, and they're not. They're just letting it sit there. And then Kevin Frazier said, and they try to cover that mess up with patchouli oil, as if we can't smell the funk underneath that.
Yeah, but man. You know what? What's even crazier is that all the illegal Mexicans I've worked around in all the years, man, these guys will be stacked up 15 to an inner tube coming across the Rio Grande. They'll be stacked up in a hotel 12 deep. And somehow, some way, 12 to and I've seen it. I've seen back when you used to do jujitsu when you were a kid, your mom and I saw 12 little Mexicans jump out of this Chevy Caprice. And yeah, to go to jujitsu practice. I saw it. How they had
said little Mexicans like they were Oompa Loompas or something.
Man, they rolled out. I thought it was a clown car I was looking at, bro. But I was like, surely these kids don't all belong to that one lady. But then again, I'm starting to wonder if they got a different gestation period. But anyway, these kids come rolling out of there like nothing I've ever seen before. But in all these guys, even when they were stacked up a dozen to one motel room, I'm talking 12 to one motel room. Even they never came out smelling like this. I don't know how they worked it out, but they didn't come out. They didn't show up to work smelling like hot garbage, but these other folks do. So that, like I said, there's something going on. I haven't figured it out, but I think there's some nasty sacrament. There's got to be some satanic whatever going on anyway. Yeah, folks, I actually witnessed that with my own two eyes. Me and your mom were like, hey man, are they ever going to quit coming out? I was waiting for the trunk to lift up. Yeah, I was like, but they didn't smell like that. And you know what it's like when you're on a mat rolling with somebody in jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah.
Nothing worse than the nasty SOB that comes in there stinking. But anyway, these people are hardly doing any physical activity, and they come rolling in there with them dreadlocks, dude. Had this one fool walk past me looking like Captain Caveman. I'm ready. I'm like, I almost asked him, I was like, hey man, you think you can get me some shampoo out of that beard of yours? Like, I almost did it. I mean, I almost did it, and I should have, but I was like, man, I really need to catch this on film. But he had this big old beard, and you could tell, and I could smell this guy from 10 paces away. Yeah. I can't even believe I spent this much time talking about it. Anyway, son, let me kick it on over to you. What's going on in your world?
Today, right before coming in here and filming this or doing the live stream, I literally just got done filming a compost video, which will be out this evening. I stopped editing it to do the live stream, but that will come out this evening. Also this week, if you're interested in a soil biology test, then shoot me an email. I'm launching that this weekend or this week.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm going to start doing that. So if you're wanting to get like a gauge on where your soil's at, what to do to make it better, then shoot me an email and we can get a soil test done. And then we can also, what's cool about it is that we can also keep a record of yeah. Maybe they're friends of the fat dude. Yeah. But what's cool is that we can keep a record of like your progress on in your soil and stuff. So we can look at the old tests compared to the new tests, see if we're going the right direction, see if we need to change anything, stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then Forest Dog says, William, did you ever follow up on your electroculture experiment? Yes, I did. And in fact, the beds that I did with the potato beds that I did with the electroculture did worse than thanks, Kevin. Man.
Hey, thanks, bro. You don't need to break bread, but if you break bread, I won't fake dead.
Thank you. Yeah, the electroculture beds did worse than the potato beds that I didn't add anything to. The only thing they had was prior like compost that I made, but that was added to it before the the electroculture stuff. So yeah, the electroculture did worse. I don't know what to tell you about that, but yeah, that's what I've been up to. It's just compost
Well,
and filming and all that.
well, man, shoot, man, I'm here to tell you this world is getting strange, y'all. Like I said, I didn't count on the Pope dying, and if I got some of the facts wrong regarding the Petrus Romanus, I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to fact check me out there. But if I got anything wrong regarding that, by all means, let me know. It's been, like I said, it's been well over a decade since I read that book. So, yeah,
Right. We actually got a comment talking about that, saying Saint Malachi was apocryphal.
I'm not
And
sure about that.
assuming, well, that's just what he was saying, assuming that it was fake. And I would say, like, just because it's an apocryphal book does not mean it was like it's fake. I mean, you have to put these strict scriptures through the prophets test. And keep in mind, like, the books that were chosen in the Bible, depending on which like version you read, which translation you read, there's different books involved.
Well,
So
the
like,
Ethiopians had the Book of Enoch in there long before anybody ever even heard about it in the West. So,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of good stuff out there, and if nothing else, there's a lot of historical, wonderful. I mean, the Book of Enoch was quoted by Jude, the brother of Jesus, for crying out loud, and I believe Peter. So, so if nothing else, these were historical accounts. I would highly check out. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank right now. Um, but there's a lot of good sources out there to explain pros and cons of all these different things. But regarding that Saint Malachi prophecy, or whatever you want to call it, or who inspired it, I don't know. But at the end of the day, Tom Horn and Chris Putnam in that book chronicle how this dude was right on the money up until that point, and that's what they used to say that this was going to be the next pope, and that the previous pope was going to step down, because nobody knew that he was going to step down. Certainly, even people in the Vatican didn't even know it was going to happen. So when they predicted that, that's why this thing sent shockwaves up and down the corridors of power there. So there might be something to it. Look, I'm not saying there is or isn't. The timing just seems pretty doggone suspicious. And the more I get to examine this, once I get time to examine it, I'll probably have something else to say regarding all this. All right, so Wave Watch, Billy 100 will get you $100 off that Wave Watch. Believe me, every time I go to Asheville, I wear that thing because there's an anxiety setting on there, and that's pretty much these days the only setting I use. That and the Self-Edgio. As I've improving other things in my life, I don't need it as much, but there are times when Michelle needs it. So that thing's pretty handy. So Billy 100 will get you $100 off of that. Coming up May 2nd through the 4th, it's just around the corner, y'all. Mountain Readiness. Go to mountainreadiness.com. Go get your tickets over there. I'd get them ahead of time, y'all. I'm telling you, this thing looks like Pat Miletich, Dr. Will's going to be there, a whole bunch of other people out there. Ann Vandersteel's going to show up, and folks, you want to go check that out. I think you're going to be glad you did. It's the best festival you don't know about. And then also May 4th, 1 to 4 p.m. in Lawrence, South Carolina, homesteadergathering.com. They got a little thing going on down there. I don't know why it is, but every time they get a gathering going down there, I always am booked for something else. So I wish I could be there, but maybe next time. All right, Redemption Shield 10% off with promo code PERMA. I'm G'd up from the feet up, and I mean grounded. So got my bare feet on one right now, especially while I'm being hit with all of this stuff in the studio. And of course, I got my glasses on, those blue blocking glasses. If you get any of those, folks, make sure they are high quality. All right, so let's go into the good news section. Okay. I basically grew up in Oklahoma. So this one's near and dear to my heart. Former U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft stands accused of orchestrating Oklahoma City bombing cover-up per court records. Now, Jesse Trenadu, I had a guy on a while back who did the documentary called A Noble Lie. If you haven't seen it, it's called A Noble Lie. And if you look at the origins of that, it goes all the way back to Plato, as I recall. Meaning that, the powers that shouldn't be should basically lie to the people for their own benefit, for everybody's benefit, basically doing us a favor by lying to us. Anyway, in that documentary, you'll hear about a guy named Jesse Trenadu. He had a brother who was murdered in federal custody by federal agents, and a whole lot of crazy things went on. I mean, you'll probably see a couple of overviews or overlaps with 9/11. For example, all of the footage of Oklahoma City, supposedly everybody that saw McVeigh there saw another person or others involved. In fact, there's a book on the shelf down there. Your mom read it first, and of course I read it. It was called Others Unknown, and it was written by the lawyer of Timothy McVeigh, claiming that there were a number of others out there. The guy that's still in custody, federal custody, locked up in a Supermax right now. His name, doggone it, I can't remember his name right now, but he was supposedly locked in step with Timothy McVeigh. Nobody can talk to the guy. He says he knows who suspect number 2 was. In fact, my second oldest brother was picked up as suspect number 2 in Oklahoma City, right when that thing went off. So anyway, going back to John Ashcraft, I almost said something different. Ashcroft. Yeah. Yeah, he's a skunk just like all the others. And just like the people in the current administration. I mean, these people are all bought and paid for. They're skunks and they work in the interest of everybody but we, the people. So anyway, I'm hoping the needle moves a little bit because people are starting to ask critical questions about Oklahoma City, 9/11. Even some noted Congress people are starting to say, hold on a minute. How did Building 7 fall at 9/11? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is that hopefully this is starting to open up the floodgates a little bit more now. I have very little hopes in terms of, certain segments of our society actually waking up to this, but you don't need a majority. You just need a dedicated, irate minority to actually make a move on this sort of thing. So hoping that moves the needle a little bit. All right, here's the next one, son. Zoomer awakening. Younger generations embrace decentralization amid tech-fueled distrust. So we're finding out in this article that basically Zoomers, or basically the latest generation, the young folks in their 20s, early 20s, they're waking up at a record pace. In fact, the hardest people to wake up in my experience, notwithstanding this crowd, I want to make sure I put that caveat out there, the hardest people to wake up are the baby boomers. Mm-hmm. I mean, strangely, our number one demographic are baby boomers that listen to this show. So obviously I don't mean all of you. People in my generation, Generation X, they don't wake up so easily. But the ones right now, your generation and Zoomers, oh, son, they are absolutely waking up with a furiousness. And because they understand tech so well, they're able to communicate the point to other people that are out there in a better way than people in my generation ever could. So
I remember telling you, like it was years ago, like everybody blames like my generation and generations younger than us. Like, do we have our faults? Obviously. But largely, like we're more awake than the generations older than us. Like there's a larger percentage awake than the generations older than us. Like the truth about 9/11. Okay, I'll put it to you this way. In our textbooks in history class, when I was in high school, they full-blown admitted like the whole Gulf of Tonkin incident was fabricated, that it was just like a method to get into Vietnam. Like that was just in our textbooks open. Wow. Yeah. So there's part of that, but like we also isn't there that phenomenon, like if you don't live through the tragedy, or if you live through the tragedy, you're less likely to believe it was a conspiracy?
Absolutely.
Like, anybody younger than me probably doesn't remember much about 9/11. I barely remember 9/11, and I remember the theories about what had happened. Oddly enough, my second grade teacher asked us all what we thought happened that day. And oddly enough, remembering some of those, thoughts, they were more accurate than the official narrative right now.
Was that Mr. Bush?
No, that was my sixth grade teacher. Mr. Bush was probably the best teacher I ever had. No, that was my second grade teacher. I don't remember her name. It was
I remember your Mr. Bush asked, so to any of you, I used to make you watch State of the Union addresses and all that kind of stuff. And I remember Yeah, apparently he about fell over and busted a gut rolling when he asked, "Did anybody watch the State of the Union?" And you said, "Yeah, you did." And you said Nancy Pelosi needs to lay off the Botox when you were in sixth grade. And apparently this guy about peed on himself laughing.
Yeah.
I guess he was shocked that you even knew who that was. But when you were little, I would make you memorize, death counts and wars and tragedies and stuff like that. So you had
Yeah.
you were getting that indoctrination. And of course, I didn't understand the value of homeschooling and stuff at that time, but you turned out quite well despite all that. So anyway, to me, it is a net plus. And I think Ken and Amy wrote in here, that some of them are still wanting a participation trophy. Absolutely. But regarding these people, these kids are becoming harder to hoodwink than the people that live. I lived through 9/11. I'm from, when Oklahoma City went off, I can tell you where I was. I was at Fort Carson, mopping a floor. I can tell you exactly what I was doing when somebody said, "Hey man, ain't you from Oklahoma?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, that's where that Murrah building is where I raised my hand to join the Army. And of course, all of us that knew something, I guess I can't go into a whole lot of detail right off the bat, but I can tell you from the very beginning, there's those of us who were trained in certain things that knew immediately that the official story of Oklahoma City was a lie, because you're not going to tell me that ammonium nitrate would do that job on that building. In fact, there are certain, and I got to be really careful about how I say this, ANFO, or ammonium nitrate free-flowing compound, it's an impossibility. In fact, there was a weapons general, a 2-star general, I believe, General Parton, even agreed with me, saying that is an impossibility. You're not removing. In fact, we have different charges for doing the very same thing. And the name of that of what you need to do that sort of thing is, the first word is composition. Okay. Composition. And it ain't ammonium. That is not the first word. So I'm going to be careful about how I say that. All right. So, yeah. So anyway, the lies, people are starting to see through them. So that's a wonderful thing. All right. So the third one, even though I got lots and lots of disappointments in this latest regime, Trump opposes new gun control measures after this latest tragedy. Is it legit? I don't know. I haven't had a chance to examine it. But he says guns are not the root cause of violence. And he won a couple of points in that view, but I still don't trust this guy as far as I can throw him. But I'm going to call that good news. I'm going to call that.
Are you talking about the Florida State event?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
The latest thing that happened. Still haven't even gotten to the bottom of what actually happened out there during the thing in Vegas. Whole lot of weird stuff goes on. That Pulse nightclub thing, the whole 9 yards there was screwed up from the very beginning. None of the official stories panned out. I mean, every single thing they come up with whenever it's a mass casualty event or something like that, you always find out that the story is not what they say it is. And having been in the news business a while, folks, I can tell you most of these things are absolutely fabricated. All right. So with that said, we're going to go into my man, Eric Sider.
Hey, Eric Sider here with your Pimpcast tip of the day. Today's tip, cold climates and wildfires. Though climatic precautions, protecting pipes and water storages, angling roofs, thermal masses for heat, glass houses are necessary, in particularly frigid climates, cold and the elements it creates, like snow and ice, need to be viewed as potential advantages. Snow can reflect the sun for concentrations of heat, or it can pile up to act as effective insulation. Wind-blown snow can also be caught with hedges, fences, or windbreaks so that it melts in particular places. Solid ice pond surfaces can be used to strategically sink fish traps, fish habitat, or anchors, while glass houses or covered tires can be floated on ponds to allow wintertime access to water and/or fish. Ice, too, can be harvested and stored underground for use in the summer. In Russia, Canada, and Greenland, there are areas of permanently frozen ground, permafrost, which cannot be recovered in the foreseeable future, but need to be preserved because they are preventing the release of huge deposits of methane into the atmosphere. Especially in the hotter, drier areas of this climate, the Mediterranean zones, we have to design our systems to prevent catastrophic wildfires. In these regions, hot, dry air approaches from the inland deserts, providing oxygen for fires, while rampant winter growth from the wet season provides vegetative fuel for the fire. Some wildfires are started by lightning, but the majority are intentionally begun by humans and get out of control. Wildfires occur roughly every 30 years in wet forests, every decade or so in dry savannas, and possibly every year in grasslands. Landscapes that border arid areas have the highest risk, but fire-resistant vegetation, bodies of water, and roadways can help to subdue the spreading of fires once they start. In fire-prone areas, there should be a prepared strategy for wildfires. Fuel reduction is also an important strategy as the fire season nears. And though cool burning might be popular, it is the least secure method. Instead, we should mow or graze grasses out, compost flammable materials, and include safety dams as part of all developments. Houses should not be sited uphill from potentially hazardous sites, and fire and radiation refuges should include a 300-liter tank of water, plenty of buckets, lots of blankets, and an indirect entryway. Smoke and radiant heat are bigger hazards than the actual fire, and large, solid objects can provide triangular shelters from them. After fires, forest soils are damaged, with no organic matter or life to rebuild them. Nutrients from ashes quickly leach away, and there is large risk of mudslides. Fire never improves soil. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Eric Sider. If you're in need of permaculture t-shirts or remote permaculture consultation and design, head over to ericsider.com. And for those in the Sacramento area, check out my permaculture community group, permaculturefairoaks.org.
That's my dog right there. So go check out Eric. You know, I got on one of his shirts right now, and yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so go check him out. You'll be glad you did. So check this out. Wow, great time.
Hey, real quick, Dad. The biggest point that I want to point out with what Eric just said is that fire never improves soil. There are a ton of people who burn their pastures because they think it's going to improve the soil somehow. Fire never improves the soil. And in fact, the species that come in after, since you burned up all the phosphorus, the species that come in after, like in Australia, are usually or sometimes ferns, which are high in cyanide, which you're just slowly poisoning you're just slowly poisoning. If you're grazing cattle, you're slowly poisoning your cattle because those ferns have cyanide. They have a defense mechanism in the form of cyanide to stop anything from like grazing it until it's completed its job. Ferns replace the phosphorus back into the soil. I'm so glad he said fire never benefits the soil.
Well, let's not also forget that you're turning, if it has any clay in that soil, you're turning it into terracotta, depending on how hot that fire gets. So, I mean, these things can be done to a certain extent strategically. I want to be real. You know what? I'm not even going to touch it right now because I can go down this rabbit hole in a bad way. So Finley's mom asks, does anyone ever consider the long-term damage of Chernobyl? And the reason I'm going into this because it's actually like a really good segue into what I'm going to talk about. Does anyone ever consider the long-term damage of Chernobyl? Why doesn't anyone talk about it? And how that could could be the cause of so many things. Okay. So I've talked about it before, but the Lubke, Leubke, the Lubke farm in Austria was downwind of Chernobyl. To our knowledge, is the only place following that Chernobyl disaster that to this day, you could never, even when it happened, you couldn't get a Geiger counter to go off on that farm, even though they grew some of the things that would have been the most receptive to all of that fallout. And they were growing brassicas. But you know what the Lubke farm was really famous for? Windrow composting. They pioneered windrow composting, and they're still around today. To this day, that farm is basically an oasis. Radiation, 360 degrees all the way around that place. But somehow, there's no radiation at that farm. But somehow, mainstream science has never looked into this place and said, well, what's going on here? You know, it's not easy to figure out what's going on. Oh, they're doing composting. Is there something in this composting that is, and forgive my use of the word, transmuting this radiation? Because that's exactly what's going on. If it's coming in as a certain particle and it's being transmuted into something else, well, I can't say with any degree of certainty because nobody is willing to go out there, no government, no nothing, no anybody is willing to go out there and do the test and do the research and find out that what's really happening. Okay, I'll bring up another one. How about Fukushima Daiichi?
Yeah.
Fukushima to this day, this is why I was on the phone with Dane Wigington a couple of weeks ago, and we were, he was giving me some information regarding a few things, and we were just kind of chit-chatting about this and that, and I was explaining to Dane that, man, I can't even go fishing in the Pacific anymore. I mean, so remember that time I went up to Alaska, and I came back with 200 pounds of salmon and 40 pounds of halibut, and came home with that stuff, ate it until the freezer died.
Yeah.
Boy, I could have cried that day. Anyway, I can't even do that anymore. Why? Because Fukushima is basically poisoning the entire Pacific, but nobody's talking about that either. So that's exactly the perfect segue into get into what I'm talking about, is like the easiest ways to fix your soil. Now, I'm going to swing back to the Lubka farm. Compost, and specifically in their case, windrow composting. Even though, because here's what they'd find out. Let me just go ahead and just cut to the chase right off, because I got some other things in here as well. The reason why mainstream science won't go out there and examine the Lubka farm is because they're going to find out that low energy nuclear reactions actually happen at a level that nobody wants to admit to, because supposedly transmutation can only happen in a nuclear reactor. So if it's happening on the ground, that means the good Lord put things on this planet that will absolutely tie up all of these toxins out there, even these so-called forever chemicals, which, no, we shouldn't be breathing them in or using them or doing anything with them. But at the end of the day, the answer to all of this stuff goes back to composting. So we're going to talk about some methods. And the reason why, and that your question, it couldn't have been more timely, or your statement rather, couldn't have been more timely, because I go on week after week, day after day, month after month, it seems, about this crap they're spraying from the sky. Now, Dr. Jane Ruby sent in a sample to Mike Adams. He tested it, and what did it have in it? Oh, basically confirmed everything Dane Wigington's been talking about all these years. High levels of aluminum, extremely high, barium, strontium. Put them all together. I mean, BaAl, ball. I mean, barium and aluminum, put them together, ball. I mean, that's what they're dropping from the sky. Now you got polecats like Alex Jones and a number of others saying, oh, this is jet exhaust. It's not what you said before. And besides, there's no way aluminum melts at 2,500 degrees. The jet engines run at 3,500 degrees. So how's that happening? And then all these nanoparticles that Mike Adams is finding in there. So there's a lot of weird, strange, crazy stuff going on. And a lot of people may be getting discouraged because I talk about this and you're thinking, well, why even mess with it? Well, folks, go back to the Lubka farm. I'm going back to that again, because there are methods that you can bring to bear that might move the needle in a positive way. And judging by all the things that are going on right now, folks, we need to bring all of it to bear. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go with the very easiest one. And like I said, Finley's mom, your statement couldn't have been more timely, because it hit at exactly the right time. I'm going to say right off the bat, compost. Son, what do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the video I was filming today, I mentioned multiple times, compost is the solution to all of your problems on the farm, other than improper design. But yeah, compost fixes all of the problems, whether it's disease, or whether it's like a lack of forage growth, if it's like weeds in your garden or in your pasture. Those cyanide plants that I was talking about earlier, those ferns that are heavy in cyanide, you can get rid of those by composting. And there's a bunch of different ways to compost. You don't have to straight up make like a compost pile. Correctly grazing is composting. Mowing is composting. Chop and drop is composting. Peeing on sawdust is composting. All these different versions are composting, and your application, like the method depends on the scenario, basically. Or you can do like an intentional compost pile and do extracts and stuff like that and speed things up just even faster.
I'm glad you brought that up, son, is that the composting, most people seem to think that composting, and I get it, they seem to think, oh, you need a compost pile, you got to put your browns and the greens together and all that good stuff. Yeah, that's one way of doing it. But really, whenever you put carbon with nitrogen, okay, for every single, go to some grazing genius like, let's say, Greg Judy. What is his solution to nearly every single pasture problem out there? What does he do? puts a bunch of carbon down in the form of hay. And then, of course, it will become carbon. And then what's going to happen? He's feeding the microbial life down there. And what is that? What's happening? He's basically composting on site. He's composting in place. So every time you roll down hay, people are thinking, oh, well, they only ate a little bit of it. No. You're missing the point here. I'm not a cattle farmer. I'm not a sheep farmer. I'm not a chicken farmer. I'm not a duck farmer. I'm not any farmer. I'm a microbe farmer. If you concern yourself by feeding those microbes at the end of the day, you're going to find out that every step you take towards it, you're going to get 20 back to you. So when you're out there giving your animals dewormer and things like that, you're only killing your top predators out there in the soil. It's basically going through the African savanna. Every time you give them dewormer, your worms in that soil is the equivalent to a lion on the savanna. So what would happen, son? What happens if you get rid of all the top predators in a particular environment, which is what you're doing when you kill all your worms?
It's the same thing that's going on with the deer in Kansas right now. That's why they have like a free-for-all in Shawnee Mission Park every year, is because there's no predator to keep the deer population in check. So the deer population keeps growing and growing and growing until nature's like check system comes into play and then creates disease. And then you have all these deer start dying off from disease because there's no predator there to keep the numbers in check. And then it's like this, it's just unbalanced at that point. You don't have anything to keep the other guys in check. And then, yeah, it just is a free-for-all. And the African savanna is the exact example I used in that video I was recording earlier. It's like, so the compost that you buy that has that nematode extract applied right before packaging, well, there's no prey for that nematode. That's one of the upper echelon. If worms are the lion, then we'll call nematodes hyenas. They're a little lower on the list, but there's nothing for the nematodes to eat unless you have root feeding nematodes, which are the bad guys, or switcher nematodes, which will eat the bacteria and fungi or bacteria until like they're all gone, and then they start eating roots. If you don't have the prey built up, then the predators don't have anything to eat. And if you don't have the predators, then the prey get too big in numbers and start creating other issues. You need the complete soil food web.
Absolutely. So here's another little method. You could use cover crops. I mean, that's another method too. We're talking about how to build your soil, and it could be in your garden setting. It could also be out there in the field. And at the latest Stockman Grass Farmer Conference, which was probably one of the best conferences I'd ever been to, there was one presenter that talked about the advantage of having forbs in your pasture. And what they do, you have different zones in your soil taxonomy, okay? Different horizons, if you will. And the benefit of things like certain cover crops, I mean, your certain grasses will only go so deep. And you will never find a grass or a tree root that will go past 300 PSI in compaction. But you got other things out there. Remember that terracotta layer? Let's say you made the mistake of burning, or the owner did before you. Well, using your forbs could be a way to penetrate that barrier. Okay, things like even your dandelions. I mean, daikon radishes, man, vetch, clover, all these other things, radishes. I mean, it doesn't all have to be the same thing. It could be your forbs out there. And we find out that your animals, when you have a high forb level out there, they do even better in those environments. But what are you doing at the same time? It still comes right back to composting. So that's another way of going about it too. You got anything to say about that one, son?
I mean, that's right on the money. I mean, if you do have that compaction layer, depending on how deep it is, you can come through with like a yeoman's plow or a broad fork and then break up that compaction layer. And then your microbes can sink down below that compaction layer, start flocculating some of the clays or the hard pan and stuff like that. And then your roots can penetrate deeper. But like, there's no lower limit to compost. I mean, there's no lower limit to like your roots. Like they're limited by your first compaction layer. And then you were talking about I can't remember the 300 psi. Like, can trees and stuff like that penetrate past 300 psi? Maybe, but not within human lifetimes.
Well, we know forbs can. And then honestly, we find out that through Dr. Elaine Ingham's work that maybe the trees might be able to do it based on that cave experiment that she did. So they will find the fissures in rocks. but that's where your forbs and putting out a good cover crop might be a very big blessing to you. So, and like William said, I mean, if it comes, I know of one person in all of North Carolina that has a yeoman's plow, and I think you can borrow it.
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, that'll get down in there. But also, if you're going to use a yeoman's plow, you don't want to make the same doggone mistakes that put you in there. Why do you think the hard pan keeps dropping and dropping and dropping? It's because we are absolutely doing the worst things possible to our soils. So another way of building soil out there, and we've talked about it numerous times, and it comes down to applying mulch. Okay. So when you lay down a mulch layer, let's talk about it in the garden setting this time. So what are you doing essentially when you put down mulch?
You're feeding your more like complex organisms and stuff. Depending on what kind of mulch it is, you're like if you're doing wood chip mulch, then you're feeding the fungi. If you're doing like a lower carbon source mulch, then you're feeding some of the other guys, like some of the bacteria and fungi as well. But you're keeping the soil protected. You're not allowing the direct sun to start evaporating water off the surface of the soil, which creates a salt, which is, anti-growing. Salts are, and you're retaining moisture as well, and you're like keeping some sort of protection for your seedlings and whatnot, so they can stay a little bit more moist, stay a little bit more humid as they germinate and then pop up through that mulch. Now, you can also do like a living mulch as well, which is what I do out at the demonstration site with the crimson clover that I have out there. That is the fastest transition of bad soil to good soil I have ever seen in my life. And it retained it retained more moisture than I was expecting. Last year when I did sweet potatoes out there, I watered them in, and that was the last time I watered them. And then I had a fantastic harvest at the end of that 120 days. It was fantastic. And I did not take care of them at all. I didn't weed them. I didn't water them. Nothing. All I did was plant them, water them in, and then harvest them when the time came.
So as far as mulch sources, I mean, you can use everything from leaves to wood chips, straw, grass clippings, even, 3 to 6 inches deep. I mean, all of that stuff. And you'll find out when your soil becomes alive. And I talk about this all the time. I do, especially around my trees. I'll put them in a mulch layer around every tree. Let's say it's 8 to 10 inches tall. The soil is so alive in the areas. And we were at a place where there was no life in this soil. The soil will become so alive that 8 to 10 inches of mulch around there will be ground level in just a short amount of time. So if you just work, because that's how nature does it. Nature puts the fertility on top. That's why things like hugelkultur, they have their role, but at the end of the day, do you see it that way in nature? No, not unless there's been some pyroclastic flow and you got a bunch of trees underground. Generally that doesn't happen. So, Another cool thing, and William kind of covered it a little bit more, but we'll go into maybe greater detail right now, is bringing your allies to bear in the form of, let's say, worm castings or compost teas. The video I'm doing right now, where it's probably going to come out maybe 2 days from now, maybe Friday. I'm not sure. It depends on if I can get 2 minutes to rub together to actually get it edited and squared away. But essentially, here's what I'm doing, folks. I quite literally bought the worst stuff I could find. Okay. And all I'm doing to transform, when I say stuff, I mean compost. They call this stuff compost, but it's garbage. It's absolutely garbage. And I'm transforming it 2 different ways to show you how it can be done. Now, it's not really an experiment because we've been down this road before. We know we can take awful things and make them wonderful. And we do that through composting. And in this particular case, I took half of it and I made and all I did was sprinkle compost extract on top of it. And then I took the other half and I've done not an 18 day. I'm basically doing a thermophilic compost pile, and I'll show you how to do that. So by bringing to bear, if you have one good compost pile, you could inoculate. Theoretically, son, if you have one good compost pile, you would never have to really make another one again. If you wanted to go buy like a yard of that junk and use your good pile to constantly inoculate bad piles, you could do that indefinitely if you really think. And then their bad pile became good. It's a self-licking ice cream cone.
Or go even cheaper. Instead of buying that crappy compost, buy an even cheaper version of just topsoil and inoculate that. You can
Yeah,
just inoculate topsoil, fill dirt.
absolutely. Absolutely. I was looking for the worst stuff possible. That topsoil probably would have had more life in it than this other stuff, but I've even taken some and I'm growing potatoes in it right now, and it's transforming. I'm transforming the soil with the triple organic potatoes that we got them in there. So I'm doing it on the spot to show that it can be done, folks. Even despite all this junk they're dropping from the sky, sadly, it's going to require more elbow grease out of us. We're going to have to learn how to compost. And what we're coming up with is a decentralized way. That's what we're doing in the Living Soil Foundation, is trying to come up with a step-by-step guide. And it might involve you maybe buying some products. I don't know what that absolutely looks like. But once we cross that finish line, I might ask you to go out there. Hey, if you want to do it, go buy Dr. Will's product. And, go learn how to make compost. I mean, honestly, you can go out there and buy it. I know people are limited on time, but unless you know that person and they're producing really good stuff like us or like William, I would stay as far away from it as you possibly could, because if you don't have the cool thing about having a bubbler where you can, what do you call that thing? It's not a bubbler, a vortex.
Oh, yeah.
A vortex machine that would basically take that compost. You could put in marginal compost and may have some bad stuff in it. Well, the beauty about running it through an oxygen-rich environment is that the bad stuff can't live in there. So if you add any bad stuff, it's going to die off. But not everybody's doing it that way. They're going to probably do it in a 5-gallon bucket and do it that way. So if that's what you're doing, you want to make absolutely sure the stuff you're using is top notch. So another way of going about this, son, let's talk about integrating animals. Obviously adding fertility and via manure and, stirring up some of the pests out there, or using your multi-species grazing operations. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's one of the fastest ways to build soil, is by putting down carbon, grazing animals over the top of it. Didn't Greg Judy have to replace fences because his soil was building up to a height where his animals could just kind of walk over or something?
I think Joel did. Joel did.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the fastest ways to build topsoil. I think top 2 ways to build topsoil is sheet mulching and grazing animals. And literally just put down carbon, graze animals over the top of it until you get the results you want, until you stop getting the pigweed and all these species that everybody hates, and you start getting some actual nutrient dense species that the animals can benefit from. But I mean, grazing correctly, you can increase your forage growth by 300% by grazing per season by grazing correctly, which means you can then increase your stocking density. You can get more animals per acre if you increase the forage growth. There's just a ton of benefits to grazing correctly. And there's multiple ways and multiple levels of grazing correctly as well. Like the method that all the ranchers and farmers use around here, which is I'll move them from field to field once every 2 or 3 months or something like that. And that's being generous. Is not grazing correctly. You need to mimic what the bison did in North America when the wolves were around, where they're constantly moving every single day. They're going to a next place. Now there's more advanced methods of grazing, but just keeping them moving them every 1 to 3 days is a very, very good start.
And that's exactly where we are right now. Is my stocking density. I moved them from the paddock today, and I'm like, man, they didn't even eat half of it. And ordinarily before, so I mean, we don't have enough stock right now. So these guys are about to have babies here before long, and our stocking density is touch and go to be able to keep up with the level. In fact, last year before I got more stock, I mean, I had to go out there and weed eat. So whatever your animals don't do, you got to do. So, and by increasing, that's the beauty of doing this, is that when you do it right, you'll find out that, man, good night, man, I don't have enough animals. And that's a good place to be. That is a really good place to be. So yes, that is one great way to increase your fix your soil, in the pasture setting. I'm going to bring up biochar is another way, but honestly, Sam, why is the reason you wouldn't want to use biochar? Even though you got people around here that are now claiming themselves to be, remediation specialists, all of a sudden biochar is the answer to everything. What's your thoughts on that?
Biochar is best suited for sandy soils. So like soil that Deep South Homestead has, that's where biochar would come in super handy because the water flows through those sandy soils so doggone fast that there's no homes for the microbes. Like the microbes don't have enough time to latch onto those large sand particles. So biochar gives them a place to live. Think of like an apartment complex for your microbes. That's the benefit of biochar. Now, the downside of biochar is that if you apply it without actually inoculating it, then you're going to be robbing the microbes from the surrounding area at first, and you're going to have some negative side effects for a while before you start seeing any kind of benefits. It's not like, and also biochar doesn't solve the issue of not having microbes. You still have to bring in the doggone microbes. So like one of the fastest ways to inoculate biochar is to feed it to an animal. That's one of the fastest ways. And then what comes out the other end is going to be inoculated biochar that you can then use in your compost and inoculate it. So when they come out of the animal, it's not necessarily the best microbes. Like they're probably going to be anaerobic, but you can replace those guys with your compost, with like the beneficial aerobic microbes in your compost. Or you can just sprinkle biochar directly into your compost. It's still kind of beneficial. It gives like a longer lasting, it holds a lot of water. So if you're in a drought prone area, then biochar could be helpful for that, but you still have to inoculate it. No matter which way you go about it, you have to inoculate biochar. That stuff that they were using, Terra Preta down in the Amazon, that's how they that's how they were building their food forest. And that's what the Amazon is one big food forest. That's how they built it, by giving a place for the microbes to live.
Yeah, and they've stuck around for quite a while because that soil is on another level. I hope to visit there myself. I mean, I've been near there, but I hope to actually see it myself. So here's another little trick I got from Stefan Subkowiak, using volcanic rock dust. That's another little trick that I'm probably going to show folks in this video and the cool thing is that when you work with so many different people, whether it's Joel, Elaine Ingham, Jeff Lawton, Stefan Subkowiak, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. You pick up something from each person. And if we're really good at anything, it's being able to homogenize all these different methods into a system where you can apply pretty much the best elements of all of them. And that's one of the ones I think is fantastic, especially as we've become more and more advanced in our understanding of soil science, that when you take that volcanic rock dust and you're able to put that down in there. In fact, Carl Hammer from Vermont Composting, I didn't know it at the time, but when your mom and I visited there, that was one of the key ingredients, is that he was taking Vermont granite and pulverizing this stuff into powder, and it's also in the compost. And why would you do that? Because your bacteria and your fungi in your compost pile, well, they're basically taking all those soil aggregates, whether it's coming from sand, silt, clay, volcanic rock dust, and they're making it bioavailable for your plants out there, or your grasses, whatever the case, your trees, it doesn't matter. They are making it bioavailable. So if I can take some volcanic rock dust, well, man, maybe I'm able to change things on another level, because I'm getting things out of that volcanic rock dust that maybe don't currently exist in my place. Okay. So now
you're at least guaranteeing that it's there. You're at least guaranteeing that it's going to be there.
Exactly. So maybe it wasn't indigenously here, but by taking that dust, and you don't need a whole lot of it. If you just kind of sprinkle it in your garden, you would be shocked at how well that it works. So you can now get the benefits of all these minerals from places that are mineral rich. Maybe you want to live in a place where you're deficient of, let's say, selenium. That's a big one for us around here. Now, all of a sudden, maybe through that volcanic rock dust, because nature knows exactly what it needs. You just kind of stick it out there. It just needs a dusting. It really doesn't require much. So somebody's going to ask, well, how much do you use? Look, you just need a dusting. You need very, very little. I put it around every single tree around here, and I've only had to do it once, and that's probably going to be sufficient. I might do it again, but it's not that expensive when you consider what the dividends can pay in the long run. So, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, with all these solutions that we've provided for you guys, hopefully you guys recognize that none of them came from mainstream farming. That there's a bunch of different correct methods, and none of them came from the NRCS agency. None of them came from Big Ag or anything like that. Should be should be a little coincidence there.
Well, if it did come from Big Ag, then number 9 on my list certainly wouldn't be one of them. That's tilling. That's the quickest way. We're talking about how to fix the soil. So, when you start tilling, I mean, good night, man. Yeah, okay. First year you till, yeah, you're probably going to see great results, but then it's diminishing returns after that. So, if you can get into no-till practices, you're probably going to be glad you did. And folks, one of my favorite books that really goes into great detail on that, I think, is One Straw Revolution. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And how, let's say he would have a field of, let's say it was clover. And so when it was time to plant rice, he'd go out there, remove the clover in the area you want to put the rice, and then put it in there so it all grows together. I mean, there's so many different ways to go about this, but honestly, one of the fastest ways to destroy your soil life is tilling.
Now, I'm fine with tilling once.
Yes.
Like if you till once just to get something established, if you till once and then immediately seed something, I find that to be perfectly fine. Or if you're trying to shape like raised beds or something like that with just soil, tilling is fine if you do it once and then you immediately seed afterwards so you can get something to occupy that space. So ideally, if you're going to till, plan to only do it once and then immediately put down a cover crop and immediately scatter mulch over the top of it to help, and then start watering to help protect those seedlings so they can germinate faster and occupy that loosened soil faster. So like with Jeff Lawton's, whenever I was out there, we would till the raised beds, not the actual bed where we would plant, but we would till the walkways, the pathways. Because I mean, who cares if the pathway gets compacted? That's where we're going to be walking anyway. But it was to reshape the raised beds. His tiller would push soil off to one side, so we would do that in between the pathways just to put soil back onto the raised bed, especially if they got damaged somehow, or after like a potato harvest to get the soil off the pathway and then back onto the raised bed. But you know what we did immediately afterwards? Planted. We immediately planted.
Yeah, it's not saying that you can't do some disturbance, but you don't want to necessarily make a habit of it. And plus, it's only going to make your life a little harder. You're going to lose soil every single rain event. So if you got to do it the first time, yeah, I get that. But honestly, what I do anymore, and look, you'll never hear me say my name and lazy in the same sentence because they just don't fit. But I'm all about efficiency. That's why if in any of these growing beds, sheet mulching is my answer. I'm not weeding. I'm not going to go out here and pull weeds. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I got too much on my plate to be sitting out here fooling around pulling weeds. Beginning of the season or whatever the case may be. I mean, there might be some times where you have to do that sort of thing, but honestly, I'm down for some sheet mulching. I'll go out there, cover it all up. And now I just created more soil just by doing it that way, just by chopping, dropping whatever's in place. Throw some cardboard on top of it, put some mulch on top of that, or if you got compost to spare, put that on top. So the last one I got here is, it's becoming more popular. That's the only reason I'm talking about it, but it makes no sense to me. And when I bring it up, you're probably going to say the same thing.
I already know.
Adding humic and fulvic acids. I was going to say, no, adding humic and fulvic acids. That seems to be the popular thing to do right now. But son, we already talked about another thing where those are already present. And what would that be?
Wood chips.
Compost.
Or yeah, compost. But yeah, I was thinking the fungi breaking down the wood chips would create fulvic and humic acids. But yeah, compost.
Every time you compost, I mean, you got humic and fulvic acids if you did it right. So I don't understand having to supplement that and pay for something like that when you could sit there. If you have some really good compost, you can make an extract out of it. And every time you stick it down in that water, all that brown stuff coming off of there, that's humic and fulvic acids. So I don't see the need for it. I mean, I don't see going out buying it, but that seems to be the in thing right now.
I thought you were going to mention another way to destroy your soil, and that's with those silage tarps, laying down those silage tarps.
Oh man.
It
Yeah. So since
doesn't.
you brought it up, go ahead and run with it.
You're disconnecting that part. Does it get rid of the weeds? Yes, but you're also disconnecting that part of the soil from the natural phenomena of like rain or snow or like sunlight, stuff like that. Like it's not. I know a couple of YouTubers made that method popular, and a lot of people started copying it, but it's not a benefit. You're creating an anaerobic layer where the plastic makes contact with the soil, which is the opposite effect that we want. Anaerobes are responsible, like anaerobic bacteria are the bad guys. Those are the bad guys. Aerobic bacteria are the good guys. Like aerobic organisms are the ones we want. Anaerobic organisms are not the ones we want. And I know that Jadam method of like fertilization and all that stuff is popular, but it on the face of it, it doesn't make sense. I can either make a permanent fix using aerobic microbes, or I can get stuck on that same loop, that same like nitrogen-based fertilizer loop, using like the Jadam method of like anaerobic soil compost teas and stuff. I get stuck being involved with fertilizing my plants, or I could put in the microbes there to do it for me, and I never have to mess with it again as long as I don't create anaerobic conditions or compaction.
Yeah, it's a self-licking ice cream cone. Once you get it put in place, it stays put. That's the beauty about doing this stuff, folks, is that if you do the right things, if you can okay, let's say you have soil that starts at a 5, okay? And you bring it up to, let's say, you can go from 0 to 100. Let's say you bring it up to 90. Once you get there, you got to really work hard to screw that up at that point. Yeah. You got to really work hard. So the idea is to put things in place that once they're off and running, it's like all you have to add is like having the most perfectly made machine where all you have to do is add fuel from time to time, and it doesn't require much. And it could be in the form of just wood chips, which will ultimately, I mean, if you have something that's very alive, like let's say a Paul Gauci Back to Eden kind of thing going on, where you just add the wood chips out there and it just kind of feeds itself. So you just kind of stand back. I would love, if I ever get myself up there, I want to go up there and take some soil samples, but I bet that dude has got the most seriously fungal environment you've ever seen in your life. But folks, that's really what we're getting down to here is putting in systems, whether it's in your pasture or in your garden, that once they're off and running, they don't require much more out of you. That's the beauty about something like a food forest, where once it's off and running, you just kind of write yourself out of the equation. Now, your yield isn't going to be as much as an orchard, but so what? You didn't work for it anyway. I mean,
well, your yield is higher. Your yield is higher because that's less effort on your end. Like you have to take the calories you spent from the calories you get, subtract that, and then that's when you get your yield. Now, the Burbstead said, can you please talk more about Jadam, KNF, fermentation in the garden? It's simple as this. Like if I start using anaerobic microbes to break down material and directly fertilize my plants, the issue with that is that I'm now stuck doing that forever. I have to do that over and over again. And it's only providing that plant with those nutrients until the next time you water or it rains, and then it washes down and then goes away. Or I can set up the aerobic microbes to live there permanently, to glue themselves to the inorganic matter, the sand, silts, and clays, stay there permanently, and provide what that plant needs on demand forever. That's the difference. One removes myself from the equation, which increases yield. The other one makes sure that I'm involved with the fertilization forever. Same thing with your nitrogen-based fertilizers.
Well, and then there's also this theory of quorum sensing man, I got to be really careful about how I say this because it could be misunderstood. There's a lot of schools of thought out there as of late about quorum sensing, that when your microbes become so, okay, for example, let's say I'm a bacteria and when I got a bunch of other bacteria friends, let's say everybody in this chat right now is a bacteria friend of mine. You know what? We're having to figure out how to eat, how to stay alive, how to avoid predators, and the whole 9 yards. But as that system becomes more and more and more robust. And there's one place, or at least one, or maybe two of them that I know of that have achieved that level of what some would call quorum sensing, where instead of the microbes having to go out there and do all of the above, they can now specialize because it is so well adapted. That soil is so well adapted that now, let's say, instead of me being a bacteria where I got to do all these different things myself, I can focus now on one task and be extremely efficient at it. That's quorum sensing. And I'm simplifying this very simply. And now you have other bacteria that are in that same class. They're your defenders. Then you have other ones out there that may seek food, and that's all they do. And then when it hits that level, that it is on autopilot, and that's what we should all try to achieve. Now, it feels like we're taking one step back because I got to constantly fight this junk they're dropping from the sky, but others have achieved it. I won't say who they are. This is stuff I'm not even sure I should be talking about right now, but that's exactly where we want to ultimately get to, is where everything is hit. There are areas where I'm working on this very thing. And there are probably 3 people on the planet that I know of that I think have achieved this. Now, are they willing to talk about it publicly? I don't know. But I think we can all get there, and it's all going to require, first of all, as best we can, removing the pollutants from the soil, but honestly adding more and more and more and more carbon and avoiding. I don't care if you're going to look, I will lose an entire crop before you ever see me put 7 dust on it.
Yep.
Dead serious.
Yep.
I will absolutely, because now all you did was just ruin any chance of you ever getting, well, unless you do a hard 180. When you do stuff like that, you're killing all. Yeah, you're thinking, well, I'm killing all the bad bugs. Well, you're killing all the good ones too. So if you can just suck it up that year and think, okay, did I get anything out of here that made it? Okay, well, those are the ones you want to propagate, clearly. So we can get there, folks, and it's going to take some time. It's going to take some doing, and it's going to take some elbow grease. But hopefully some of the stuff we presented here is of great value to you. Look, I know there's some questions out there. Maybe we can get to it next time, but we've gone like 30 minutes over. And yeah, I don't want to push it any further, but I want to thank everybody for checking us out today. Tell everybody about this Pimpcast and tell them what we're doing. Man, who even knew? And all in one episode, we're going to talk about the Pope 9 and how to build your soil. So you got to love it. So I want to thank Denise from Renewed Homestead. Go check them out. You're going to be glad you did. I want to thank everybody in this chat right now for all the wonderful questions and comments. And I want to thank everybody for your prayers. Until next time, stay alert.
Stay alive.
The knowledge ring with roots that run deep. Wisdom from soil. Permaculture dream. Let the ideas unfold. I'm grooving with the truth. Feeling nature's groove. Who's got the answers? All we need to do. Listen to the earth, they got us through. Let the seeds of the shame, watch the world spin. From the smallest sprout to harmony begin. In the cycle of life, where the magic's alive. To the